to our topic. So I will share my screen again. So we have no other than Ebony Adedayo, who is here, as well as many of the other contributors to the anthology that is a part of the Aya Collective. So tonight we have with us, they're going to share with us from the book, Let the Black Women Say Ase. And the Aya Collective is actually a collective that is dedicated, and Ebony will share a little bit more about in detail about the collective, but it was really created to really provide that voice in writing of Black women and African women as well. And there have been several contributors who have been not just the contributors, but there are other people who are in the space who have been able to contribute something to this work that you all will hear from pretty soon. And so without further ado, I will have Sister Ebony to actually unmute and to speak a little bit more about the anthology, as well as the presenters who she's bringing with her into this space. So I'm passing it off to you, Sister Ebony.
Thank you so much, Sister Shakita. I so appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and to share and to present this labor of love that we have been working on for a very, very long time. I was tempted to show this picture of when we first got started back in 2018. And some of the authors who are on the call tonight will very well remember this, when we were at the Heart of the Beast, and we had spent the last maybe 6 or 7 months writing short stories and fiction and stuff. And we shared those pieces, and it was my dream to publish those stories back then. And it took, as God would have it, it took almost 4 years, exactly almost 4 years from those initial writings to this point that we are right now, for those things to come into fruition. So at Let the Black Women Say Ase, the Aya Collective, as Shakita said, we are a collective of Black women, Black African women, that open up space for us to focus on nurturing writing. I love writing. I think I self-published my first book when I was 26 and didn't have any gray hair. And was very, very young. I published my first book then. I published my second one, maybe I was 29 or 30 then. So I've always loved writing. I've always had journals with me and things of that nature. I've always found it really, really important and valuable. And so I really wanted to cultivate a space that would really give me the opportunity to do what I love with other Black women. So we write together, but we do it by centering our spirituality and our sacred practices, convening opportunities for Black women to write and focus on writing in community with each other in order to provide support and encouragement to the collective. And I want to say a little bit about the piece about spirituality. The reason it's so important to what we do is because we know as Black people, regardless, when we go into different institutions or different spaces, we are sometimes shunned around bringing our spirituality, our pieces of our culture into those spaces. And so I wanted this to be a space where we're really clear about however we identify faith-wise or religion-wise, whatever our spiritual consciousness and sacred practices are, that this is going to be a safe space for Black and African women to show up as our full selves and center the spirit in everything that we do, and however we define the spirit in that consciousness. So that's a little bit about us. As I said, we've been doing this work since 2018. We were formerly called the Kinky Curly Theological Collective. I changed the name I initially started the Kinky Curly Theological Collective because I thought it was going to be a space for Black women who wanted to talk about theology. And I quickly realized that it was bigger and broader than that dream. And so changed the name in 2020 to really reflect on where I felt like we were going. So what we do writing. We write a lot. Do some research too. We do some education and workshop and trainings and things of that nature. We also do intentional mentoring. Right now, the Aya Collective has another project that we're working on with another organization where we're bringing through new writers to develop, their first manuscripts. So it's something that we practice on a consistent basis because we really believe in the ability, the power, the agency of Black women saying Ashe, saying Amen, and having our words as we speak them be validated by those around us. So let the Black women say Ashe. So this beautiful cover was designed by a sister in our community. Just so beautiful. So it was a local artist who did this work. I can always forward the information for others who might be interested. So I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. Like that cover, like when it came together, I'm like, yes, that's it. It's so beautiful. It captures the diversity and the ingenuity of all that Black women are, I feel. So in this, and I should also say the title comes from one of our initial meetings where we were talking about our writings and someone said, let the Black women say Amen. And I was like, oh, okay. I think that that's the name of the book, but we should call it Ashe to make sure that it's more inclusive to the ways that Black women express their faith and spirituality. So my point is that this has been a collaborative project with many hands, people who have really contributed to this. And so there are authors, obviously, but we also have a wonderful editor. I think she's on this card, Sister Raquette CSR. We had, she did the forward. We had a wonderful editor as well from the community, Ambrosia Frazier. We've had so many people touch this project. It's been such a blessing. So a little bit about the project. Now that I've been talking about all of the people that have been contributing, a little bit about what it is. It's full of writing from our Black sisters. In these writings, we are taught to embrace the fullness and diversity of our spirituality. We are encouraged in our mothering, whether we are natural mothers or not. We are given the courage to embrace love and life, courage when these things are really good, and courage to still lean in when it hurts. We are brave enough to cherish our strength and not use our strengths as an excuse to hide from our vulnerabilities. And so I can't remember if it was in a bigger group discussion or if it was in our small group discussion, how often we all know this misnomer about the strong Black woman or this Black women being super women. What we're really saying here is like, yes, we have a lot of strength and a lot of capacity. And at the same time, we get to show up and be authentic and be vulnerable and be needy and be cared for and be loved and still be able to say and have our words validated and really received by those around us who love and support us. So we have a couple of authors on the line tonight. We have, and I'll let each of them introduce themselves as they go, but we have Claudette Webster, we have Bisola Wald, we have Ife Olatunji, and we have Amanda's Flowers Peterson, and then myself, Ebony. And so we're gonna all talk a little bit tonight about what we did, why it's important. We do have, I just wanna give a quick plug, we do have a book launch tomorrow at the Loft on Washington at 10 a.m. from 10 to 12 p.m. Please come out and join us. Our official launch of the book is tomorrow. So you guys are hearing for the first time kind of some rich stuff about what the book is and what we've done and why it's important. So I'm going to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to facilitate the conversation, but really give an opportunity for these brilliant women to shine and share their stories and wow you all with their brilliance and their beauty. So we are going to start with just a quick, like, who are you? And anyone can decide to start first. So tell us a little bit about who you are, your name, where you're from, anything else that might stick out to you, and tell us a little bit about your work too as well. So whoever would like to start can start.
Okay, I guess I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Ife Olatunji. I'm actually a visual anthropologist and ethnographic documentary filmmaker. I work on feature documentary films for participant media in LA. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, though, and I've known Ebony since we were children. So for me, it's definitely been just an opportunity to just be creative instead of just being analytical, or being all about research, and I just wanted an opportunity to work with Black women all over the country and yeah, be supportive. Yeah.
I can go next. So I'm just really, can y'all hear me okay? Okay. I'm really excited to be here. Blessed and honored to be here with you all. I've been at New School a few times and just really always have left feeling better than I came. And so really grateful to be here for that. So I was born in Nigeria. So my name is Bisola Wald, I apologize. And folks call me BB. At the workplace, I go by Bisola. I don't let them call me BB there. And so I was born in Nigeria, came here when I was about 4. And so my education growing up has been, so interestingly enough, when we got to Minnesota, when we got to the US, the community initially that I remember first kind of embracing me as I was a little girl growing up was actually the Black community and not the Nigerian community, because I was like too Americanized and I wasn't, I just which is interesting. But anyway, so that's kind of my background, is this Nigerian girl who found affirmation in Black spaces and found education about Africa and in mostly Black spaces. That has changed. I've evolved, and I've found, but still, that was my beginning. Those are my earliest memories of my Blackness. It was that contradiction, that the diaspora not coming together, right, in my own life as a little girl, and seeing that as a little girl, how that affected me. And so right now I work, I'm a mother of 3. I work at the University of Minnesota. I'm a student as well. And my passion is teaching education. I've been teaching K-12 for years, since 2005. And so everything that pertains to children, but particularly the education of Black children, gets me excited. And being a part of this work has been such a blessing, because it allowed me really to take some time to wrestle with what I just shared with you in regards to my youth and early upbringing. And it allowed me to ask some questions and explore and to write what ended up coming out as affirmation, but then also like rage too. And so so that's one reason why I'm really excited to have been a part of this, and to also learn from more seasoned writers was also such a blessing.
Claudette, if you were going to go, I saw you moving. I'll let you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. I'm Claudette Webster, and I'm an educator in the community. I have been in the Midwest, in the Twin Cities now for 4 years. And I came to the Aya Collective somewhere in the spring of 2018 after my arrival here. And I just found it. I forget how I found it. It might have been an Eventbrite, some invitation or something like that I read. I was looking for community because I had just arrived here, and I went to Ebony's workshop and met other Black women in the community. And so that was my beginning. So I have lived in the United States since I was 10. I'm originally from Jamaica, and being in the Midwest is a change, a welcome change, but it's also a different landscape in which to learn about and to navigate. And I enjoy being here. My piece is really about spirituality in terms of, I look at 3 generations my grandmother, my mother, and myself. So I just kind of look at that in a very brief essay. And when Ebony gave me a list of things to consider, topics that I would want to write into, and that was the one that spoke to me at that time. So that is the one that is included in this collection. Thank you.
As I was adoringly introduced, my name is Amanda Flowers Peterson. I am happily the mother of two beautiful ones, and I currently play quite a few roles in my life. And so I won't talk too much about that, but I will talk a little bit about where I'm from. My family heritage is very scattered, and in the sense that my mother was disconnected from her father's family, and they grew up on different sides of the states. And my mother was with her mother, who was raised very much in Southern Illinois, south side of Chicago. And so my upbringing was my mother running away from a lot of the violent experiences that she had into rural US. And so I graduated high school from Iowa, or as my grandmother calls it in her native way, Iowa. And I graduated high school there, but I was always in predominantly white spaces. And so it wasn't until I got into college that because my family culture was so strong in my home, and that it wasn't until I got into college and didn't have that home base to go to regularly that I started noticing the violence of white supremacy on my body. And so I was a pastor for a number of years, and know some of the women a part of this group because of that connection, and ended up being a pastor in California and had just come back. And when I had come back, I was deconstructing from Christianity quite a bit. And this piece that I shared in the anthology was a storytelling of my history and my navigation towards finding Black Jesus, towards finding my spirituality and my identity as a Black woman spiritually. So just really happy to be with all of you and along such beautiful works in the anthology.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you all for all of that. I have a second question, and some of you have touched on this a little bit in talking a little bit about your work. I'm wondering if we can go a little bit deeper in what you wrote, and how it relates to your particular identity as a Black woman, and maybe other identities that you carry. And then also, I think a second question with that, how does the writing reflect Black women's ways of knowing and knowledge production? So how does your particular writing relate to all of the identities that you embody, particularly as a Black woman, and maybe other ways that you show up? Some people talk about deconstructing Christianity, so that might be an identity marker, and others being from not the US as a Black woman. So how does the writing relate to your particular identity? And then how does it reflect Black women's ways of knowing and knowledge production?
Well, I can keep going and we can maybe go the other way around. One of the practices that are sacred to me is movement. I've done movement my whole life, and movement is the way that my voice is the loudest. And so all of my writings relate to my movement practice spiritually. That has always been a part of my journey. And so I tend to connect to writing in more rhythmic ways, spoken word pieces, poetic pieces, and each one of the pieces tends to coincide with a movement that I feel I was inspired spiritually to do in my personal spiritual practices. And so for me, this work expresses a deep brokenness, a deep need for healing from harm that I wasn't even aware that my body was going through until my body stopped being suppressed because I kept forcing it into spaces to be accepted, and really realizing that the essence of my identity as a Black woman, I'm a Black Native woman, so my expressions of identity being swallowed up by people projecting on me who I am, and me never really having an opportunity to say in any community who I really am, because people would tell me who I was. And so having to walk through that, and so when I say I was deconstructing Christianity, even just reclaiming the word, what Christianity means, was a huge part of this piece and a more in depth of my identity with it.
Thank you. If we're going backwards and following that pattern. So I am currently a practicing Buddhist or a meditator. That has been my path since at least 2013, but it probably started as an undergraduate as well. And in my journey to find solace, if you will, in a religious experience, because I grew up with a grandmother who went to church practically daily, right? My mother is a practicing Catholic up until she died. And she chose that religion before crossing the waters to this place. So faith has always been a big thing in my family, in my community. Faith is important. Spirituality is important. And it has different forms. I also grew up in a culture where everything has life. Even the rocks have life. Everything has a personality. So that's very much a part of my makeup. I still accept and believe that. When I sat down to write this piece, I was really trying to explore how we got to the places we are in terms of my grandmother, my mother, and myself, in regard to religion. I don't know that I could probably expand on it a little bit more, but I just wanted to touch on how we got there and how we are different, but we are, how important it is to us. Right? I grew up reading the Bible, and God is very much an aspect of the Bible. And I move away from the term God, and I move to spirit, and I move to higher power, and I move to the universe. But there's that sense of unknowing, of not knowing that there is a force, an entity, something around us that guides us, that provides for us, that helps direct us at times. And sometimes you wonder where they are, but there, but there is, it's, so yeah, I just wanted to touch into that and begin my own journey into excavating our journeys into Christianity, spirituality, and faith. And so that's been my journey with this essay.
I can respond to the question. So my piece, I wrote 3 different pieces, and I had to really go back to them a few days ago and sit with them for a little bit. And one thing that I realized that I don't think I realized it right away is I was like, I don't think I realized it right when I was writing them, is that I had a deep longing for Pan-African solidarity as because of the ways that it met me as a child, because of the ways that I remember being received and loved on. My mother coming here as an immigrant, being provided for in the Black church that we went to. And so just this Black people coming together. And so all these aunties and uncles that, you know, more than I knew how to count from those spaces. And so that's my earliest remembrance. So thinking about, so one of my pieces is about not just what I experienced in the Black church, but I think it also came from me longing and wanting there to be this across the water, across spiritualities, across everything coming together, because I see that as a balm, and I see that as a balm for children, because I remember it, how it shaped my life, and how, and it was important when it was important to me in my youth, because what I was up against, was was school. School was trying to take me out. I was in a white faith-based school, and it was trying to destroy me. And I was getting good grades too while I was doing it. So so there's that tension that I felt even as a little girl. And I think that is and from that came some of my pieces. And then also one of my pieces, another one was talking about so education is important to me, and thinking about the war on Black children's minds and souls that's happening in education right now, and has been for a long time. And so out of like my work and the way I raise my children, having homeschooled them in a Afrocentric homeschool space, because I was tired of what I was seeing in schools, and because I didn't want my children to go through what I went through. And so then being a teacher as well, a K-12 teacher for a long time. So yeah, so one of my pieces talks about, you know, just me putting myself in my teenage body, and writing about just how exhausting it was to be so young, and to have to be seemingly fighting by yourself against systems and structures that are older than a young person is. So yeah, those are the tensions that I felt were rising up as I was writing. And so those are also the things that I write about on my own now.
Okay, I'll go next. My short story is called The Deep End of the Pool. And similar to what the title suggests, I wanted to take an emotional deep dive. It's a story that, well, first of all, my identity, I identify as a human and as an activist. So at my core, that's really who I am. I'm also Buddhist, and there's a concept in Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism called Kosen Rufu, and that is the idea of, you know, world peace, world harmony, humanity coming together for the greater good. And I think all faiths at their core, this is the real purpose of faith and religion, you know, to provide comfort to individuals, but for the individual to change and grow in such a way that they change and grow the world. And so I wanted to create a story where hopefully someone did that, where they actually could change and see the world through a Black woman's eyes and better understand how they could impact and improve that world. And so my story, you know, at the center of my story is actually a white woman, but, you know, the hero is a Black woman, and, you know, she is there, you know, pushing her to change and to not, you know, fall back on that white privilege. And And I just feel like that's the dream of a Black, that's just one of our dreams, especially in activism. We wish sometimes that they would really fully see themselves in the struggle with us, and understand that they're not just there for a moment. So, it's a story for us, but it's a story for anyone that reads it to see themselves as, going from passive to active to, engaged in the struggle for justice for all people. So yeah, that's who I am. And again, that I think that's knowledge that Black women know. I think we know that inherently a lot of times. And for me, Ebony really pulled it out of me, because I was just like, oh yeah, of course, of course the Black woman tells her off, right? Of course the Black woman sets her straight. But to write it down, was cathartic for me, and really helped me gather my thoughts and understand, how I do want to impact the world and see the world, and hopefully others will read it and feel something similar.
Beautiful. I'm so excited for you all to read this book, because as you all have been talking about these stories, I'm like, they are gonna really resonate, I feel like, with so many people as they get these stories into their hands and begin to really sit with them. We talked about deconstructing a lot and how much that pertains to our identity. We talked about spirituality a lot and how that shows up. You talked a lot about dreaming, Ife, and what that means, like the dream of a Black woman to do da 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 da, and to write that dream and to make that dream come true in the source of a fiction story, almost like Afrofuturism, where we're like, we are actually creating the worlds, we're creating the realities that we want to see. This is how we want to see other people around us and in our lives show up, so that other people have a playbook. Like you want to know how to engage and be in relationship within love and care for Black women. Here's a playbook, right? This is what you do, right? What has been this, as you all have been writing, what has been the source of inspiration for you in the writing process, and where did you draw strength from?
Okay, I guess I'll start this round off. Wow, well, like I told my breakout group, it was a conversation with my mother, just about how the world has changed from her time to my time. And, we probably have those conversations with our mothers and our grandmothers any chance we get, but I really wanted to record it, in a way. Also, even though my story is fiction, it is based on a bit of research. Now the name is going to escape me right this second, but it is based on a book written by a Black woman also about segregation and pools, and how public policy is based off of, these racist ideals from back in the past. So, I really wanted to take those Black women's words and their perspective of the world, and again, incorporate that into the story. And then, of course, just our lived experiences, what we see every day, what our friends experience, what we talk about with our girlfriends. I just wanted to put that into, a story that, is about the time that we're living in.
Whoever would like to go next. What inspired you? Where did you draw strength in writing your particular piece?
I'm an intercessor. Oh, Claudette,
Go
we
right
keep
ahead.
doing that.
No,
Are
no,
you
no.
sure? Okay. We are on the same energy phase, obviously, right now. I'm an intercessor. I identify as one. I feel my spirituality calls me to give spiritually by prayers and meditation over the people I love and over people I've never even met. And sometimes I feel I get the chance to prepare in that way before I even know somebody. And I consider that foresight. And so I operate a lot out of that space. And so the inspiration for this piece was that I was travailing pretty deeply. The loss of an identity that I thought would be lifetime. I thought I would be a pastor forever. And I have, honestly, this piece was the end of me deciding that I wouldn't be a pastor anymore, and discovering that I'm an educator and a teacher, and discovering that being that I was able to still be a spiritual leader in my community without that title. And so there was a lot of shaving away. And so my inspiration was to inspire other people to find their ashe, to find what their being is. And I found mine, and I never want to let her go. I don't know how I survived so many years not knowing who she was. And so a part of me wanted to tell the rhythm of my pain, of my travailing, but to always, my pieces that I've written before, I've been fortunate to write before and contribute to a lot of things. And my pieces always end with a charge or an inquisitive invitation to curiosity. There is no answers, but there's hope in the fact that we can be curious and that we can pursue. And that the pursuit is a part of the healing, because you can start to feel like there is no hope that we can pursue anything different than what we know. And so the inspiration and the motivation of my piece is completely hugged in that. And I hope you see that when you read it. I was very much looking forward to reading the piece with you tomorrow, but I unfortunately had a family emergency that is taking me to not be able to join you all tomorrow. But as I was planning to prepare the piece, I would hope you would hear it as well, if you ever got the chance. So.
Thank you. Both my mother and my grandmother are deceased. And so in writing this piece was actually looking for points of connection, or not so much looking for it, but just affirming points of connection between myself and them. And the journey, the spiritual journey, the life journey is about being curious. It's about stepping into the unknown and not knowing sometimes where you're stepping, but knowing the need to step forward. And so I wrote the piece at a time when I really needed to feel those people around me, feel my people around me, and to really affirm what my grandmother has taught me, what my mother has taught me about faith, about spirituality, about believing in something you cannot see, but you know is there for you and with you. And how important it is to have, whether it be in a church or not. I'm not really great on churches. I sometimes love them, and then I have I guess I would call it a love-hate relationship with churches because of all kinds of uckiness that happens there, you know. But faith and spirituality and love and grace and beauty, they all exist in our lives because of the belief in something that is felt, even though it is unseen.
I can go. I'm gonna remind myself of the question so I don't drift too much. But before I even say anything, I just wanted, just really quickly for a few seconds, just to affirm everything I've heard, in my soul just feels so much peace and alignment. And so Claudette, thanks for what you just shared as well. Like the importance of spirituality and has been something that I've been wrestling with. And my whole being is in agreement with it strongly, because but it still is a wrestling thing. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to have complexity in our spirituality. And I have been learning that, and it has been scary, actually. And I'm a lot less scared these days. But yeah, so I just feel really grateful to be here. I just want to affirm everything I was hearing. So talking about what has inspired me, I think what has inspired me is acknowledging my emotions and not making them small. I think what has inspired me is getting to know, kind of like what Amanda said, the her inside, and understanding that she has been guiding me for quite some time and all my life, and that she has been just covering me. And she's reflected in my ancestors, and she's reflected in those who love me, and my mother and my grandmother, who just passed away a couple months ago, April now. But yeah, just that has been inspiring to me. And in writing it, I let my rage, and my discontent inspire me. I didn't push it away. I just let it kind of wash over me. And then as I was writing, and after I wrote it, I was referred to different writers and was reading a lot. And Audre Lorde and the list goes on of different writers who were brought to my attention. And so there's been this beautiful healing that has come from all of that. But my inspiration was my rage and my feelings and all of the things that were pushed out of, that was discouraged of me to embody in education. And sometimes in the Black church too. And drawing from that and putting it on paper has brought me through the pandemic and has and continues to bring me to places I never would have imagined I wouldn't have been able to be in now if I had held on to those like hindrances and to those fears that are not a part of her inside of me. They're not. It's somebody else's stuff, other people's stuff, but it's not my inheritance, and it's not me, and it's not something that my ancestors embody, so I won't either. So that's been my inspiration.
Thank you all so much for that. I'm inspired tonight by all of you. And it's reminding me of this piece that I did write in the anthology. I wrote this piece back in 2019 as I was actually leaving a congregation. And you all have spoken and said so much about like really listening and following your emotions. And sometimes we are taught to second guess ourselves, like those emotions, those feelings, those intuitions aren't valid. We should suppress them. We should deny them. But then also sometimes we're just afraid to step out and follow those emotions, follow those intuitions because of what could happen if we are no longer a pastor. What could happen if we are no longer wedded to different institutions that we feel have shaped us and have been a part of our identity for so long. So I wanted to read this piece, and then I wanted to ask one final question as we close the segment of our conversation today. This piece is called One Day, and again, I wrote it in 2019. This too shall pass. One day you will stand in front of the congregation and sing about how you made it over. One day. But today is not that day. Today, your emotions are still raw. Today, your eyes are too red and your pillow too wet. Today, you can't make sense of what happened or how you got here. You are trying to string together fragments of a scattered story, like puzzle pieces going in opposite directions. Today, your heart is hurting and those emotions are real, not contrived. You can't just get over it. You are still stuck processing it, rehearsing it in your memory of where it all went wrong. Just in case someone forgot to tell you, It is okay not to be okay. Ask for help, pray, pour libation, rest, eat, make love, go to therapy, hydrate, sit still. Get all of the support you need to come through this, because you will come through this. You can do this. And before long, as you heal, this moment will be a distant memory. The scars may still be there like cuts on the body, they never completely fade away. But it won't hurt as much. You will be stronger, wiser, braver, and more beautiful than you ever thought possible. One day. What has this writing space, as I mentioned before, we started the Kinky Curly back in 2018, before the pandemic, before we had even known that there was going to be a pandemic, right? We started this writing space. And we had been writing in person. And then when the pandemic happened, we started writing online together. What has that space meant for you all that are gathered here?
Well, I'll start. I think for me, it was finding community, and it was being in community with other African descended writers in various ways and forms, just being in community and writing together, and sharing our stories or excerpts of our stories together. And that was a powerful experience for me to have. So that I can speak to that in terms of writing with the community in person. I haven't written it with the community online because I have been kind of busy, trying to find community. I mean, I am in communities, in other communities, and trying to just keep what communities I have going. And so for me, writing is my landing place, always. It is my safe place to be. And so to be in community with others who share that as a spiritual practice, if you will, as a creative practice of just a place of meeting yourself and being able to say to yourself or speak to yourself in ways no one else can. When no one else will listen to you, the page will listen, right? And so I am thankful for the community of this group and all the groups of which I'm a part. Complete.
Okay, I'll go. For me, this has been a really reflective space, an opportunity to pause and breathe and meditate and, listen as well to other women and their stories. And like I said, just to be inspired by them, to think of all, the ways in which you can express yourself and then, to practice, the discipline necessary to do so. So it's been a really great learning experience for me. And yeah.
The space has meant solidarity. Since I was disconnecting from a community I was deeply, deeply rooted in, I was concerned that I wouldn't find anyone anymore, that I could have that family-like connection where we could know each other or feel that we have a sense of interconnectedness, because my cultural makeup was so interwoven with some of the things I left behind. And so this space has meant solidarity. It's meant celebration of doing the hard things unapologetically for the sake of my rest, of my peace, not for the sake of achievement or winning, but just so that I can exist and be. And so I've really, really appreciated Sister Ebony and what she has cultivated and how she's cultivated her dream, because you can absolutely see it in all of us when we get together. Even if we don't know each other, a little piece of that dream is in each of us, and we get to have that be what interconnects us instead of rules, rituals, and practices. And I've really enjoyed that.
I would say for me, the space has been like it's been a community. It's also been like an invitation to be more introspective, like an invitation. Because when you sit with yourself for a long time, you end up just getting to know yourself, the parts, strengths and weaknesses, the parts about yourself you've been running from, the parts about yourself that have been hidden, the parts about yourself that are strong and mighty and are assets that maybe you haven't realized. And so just the invitation that Ebony and the other women offered in that space of just, like when Ebony said, okay, we're gonna write right now. I couldn't, I couldn't plan my dinner, and I couldn't budget. I couldn't do all these other things that can be distracting. It was such a beautiful space for community and for just sitting with myself to explore past, present, and future. And so that's what the space was for me.
Thank you all so much for just sharing, for being present, for contributing, for all of the different things. I know we're almost at time, but I wanted to just give a quick glimpse of some of the stories that have come through this collection. We have a fabulous author by the name of Carla Mendoza, who wrote a story called Boxes of Liberation. And so that's in this anthology. There's also a piece by Sister Iolanda Mack, who will be present tomorrow for us. That's about Black women, and it's so beautiful, so just wonderfully written, and that's in this collection. And then there's another story by a sister by the name of Elizabeth Price of Two Minds, that's in this collection. And so there are so many more. I think there are about 20 stories. By 20 authors, a collection of different essays and poetry and fiction pieces, and just personal narratives. And so if you're able to join us tomorrow for the launch of this, we want to invite you to come on out to the Loft, open book on 1011 South Washington Avenue South, 10 a.m. to noon. You can register at this link. I'll also put it in the chat. And if you can't come, please go to our website to purchase a copy of the book, purchase a couple of copies of the books for your friends, your family, your neighbors, your faith communities, your other institutions that you might be a part of, so that they can be blessed by the knowledge and the wisdom and the gifts of these beautiful women who contributed to this anthology. For more information, because the Aya Collective, this is not our only thing on the block. We got some other things that are happening. Please follow us on our website, ayacollectivemn.com. You can email me as well. I'm at ebony@ayacollectivemn.com. Thank you so much for having us in this space today, Sister Shakita, and all of the New School planners and executors and people doing all of the things. Just thank you so much gratitude.
Thank you, and thank you all. At this moment, don't go anywhere. We're here. I do want to take the opportunity to allow people from, our community to pose questions. And I know there was one question in the chat from Dr. P that asked, as a writer, did you feel that there was a structure that you had to use as a template to write your piece?
I'll answer for myself. I said no. I think everyone, I will say for myself, my piece came out of me the way that it came out of me, and I just tried to shape it in the way that it came best to me. So we didn't receive a template. There was no template given. We were just invited to tell our stories.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll say no for me as well. I think that also speaks though to Ebony's intention and the way she kind of, encouraged us to start to begin writing. It was never any sort of set number of pages or words or anything like that. She just kind of let us go ahead and express ourselves. And ultimately, I'm a filmmaker, so I was always like, what should be edited? What should I cut? So I definitely feel like it was just an expansive experience that allowed us to shape and form the stories as they came to us, or whatever we wrote.
And Sister Bisola said in the chat, no.
I shook my head, no, there was no template.
Mhm. And to follow up with that, and Dr. P, you can probably chime in if you want. As a scholar myself, and a person who identify, as Black, Pan-African, African, however you may call it or frame it, the writing that you all have done for this anthology is, it seemed to be a type of writing that is different from, like, if you're writing for the academy, or a research article. And can you speak to the importance of having that ability to just be free to write? And can you speak of what does that ability to be free to just write with no template, what does that offer you that it may not offer you in other spaces?
Can I start with that question, actually? I think the Academy, and so I do have a piece in here that does have a lot of references. I think I might have went overboard. With that, I think the Academy tries to force Black women into a particular space to write in a particular way in order to be legible. You gotta make sure you're citing particular authors. You gotta make sure that your authors are validated and they're not being critiqued too much. Like, there are all of these different rules and regulations that you need to follow in order to be legible. I even think, like, I'm entering the dissertation phase. I know Shakita is on the end of that, so I'm looking at you as my model. Like you gotta have all of these different ways in which you construct your preliminary exams, your proposal, your dissertation, all of those different pieces in order to pass and move on to the next phase. And I didn't pass readily. I had to do several revisions of my exams and my proposal in order to move on to the phase that I am now. In order to be considered legible, valuable, all of these different things. I think the free write, it gives us the space and the capacity and to say that, okay, I don't need to do all of that in order to be accepted, in order to be validated, in order to have my value esteemed and recognized. It gives us the capacity to say that my knowledge is valuable as it is, whether I have a footnote to it or not. It gives us the ability to say, like, I don't need to cite another author in order to have my words be taken seriously. And so for me, that's what the free write offers, is that opportunity to say yes to ourselves. And so one of my favorite authors, Jamila Woods, has a song called Holy, where she says, say amen to yourself, right? And so the free write gives us the ability to say amen, ashe, to ourselves, and not to the academy, not to nobody else, but to ourselves, and to start with the space where we cherish and we love and we honor our own voice and the voice of our mothers and our grandmothers and our aunties and our elders that have passed through us as well. So I wanted to offer that as people were thinking about the question, because it was like, oh, yes, this is why this is valuable.
Well, I am a creative writer, right? I'm a poet and a creative writer. So I've written like everyone else. We've gone through school, so we have had to write in a particular way. So, but when you are, when you enter an MFA program or anything else, you get a little bit more permission to write what you want, a little bit more permission. And so, and over time, a lot more permission. It is more a space of honoring what is the story that is in you that you want to tell at a particular time. So I did not, that's one of the reasons why I pursued an MFA as opposed to a PhD. I wanted to honor my creative abilities and the things that have been schooled out of me. I wanted to invite them back in. All right. So that is why I sit in this space as a creative writer, trying to honor all the voices and all the experiences that I have had to this point and dreaming forward.
Yeah, I also come from academic and analytical writing and I guess practical film writing, which is also for me a lot of research. So I really just wanted to try something different and break out of that because like Ebony described, that's my experience. It's very rigid. It's all about citation. I am never the expert, even though, you know, I'm always surrounded by people who are telling me what Black experience is like and what they think they read in a book somewhere. And I'm like, well, I'm right here. I lived it and I also have a degree in it. So, you know, it was an opportunity to talk about race and experience and justice and politics and policy and civil rights from a lived experience without anybody questioning whether or not it really happened or if it's really real or if you really feel it like that. Yes, we feel it like that. It's how we feel it. It's how we see it. And I just wanted to be there. Yeah.
If I can add concerning the writing, because I too grew up in academics, and I think when often not aware how entrenched we are in it. And so I too write, but when I literally had to fight myself to write creatively, because everything I want to write, I want to cite, right? Like I feel like I gotta get somebody else to substantiate, to validate what I'm saying. Like I don't have permission to say it, right? And so my biggest battle was with my voice that was checking me, like you can't say that. You need to get somebody else to say that. And so I purposely began to write creatively to force myself out of the academic mindset. And I want y'all to know, I still have problems. I'm not delivered all the way, but it is a challenge because we've been so trained. And even when we went K through 12, we've been trained, like you said, that. So when we show up, we show up this structured self, right? And it's white, it's totally out of our worldview. It's a white supremacist structured, which side of the brain, right or left? I don't know, the analytical side, right? That it has to flow. You got to use these words. And how do you just allow spirit to speak through you, right? How do you relax? And it sounds like you guys have been able to accomplish that. I'm really jealous. You see me, I'm green with envy right now, but I just wanted to add that.
Come be with us, Dr. P. Come be with us.
I done showed up, right, Ebony?
I was about to say, Dr. P does write with us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. She be there. So yeah, it's really been wonderful to have her in the space.
Mhm. So we have time for a couple more questions. So those of you who may have them, you can either place them in the chat or you can unmute yourself to ask that question.
Can I ask a question even though I'm a panelist? Okay, I'm gonna do it.
Let's give it a minute.
Okay, I'll wait.
But no, you can ask your question, and then also I have a question too before you ask your question. I shouldn't even ask my question again, but I'm gonna put it out there as we're waiting for others to put a question in the chat. So as you all were talking, and I'm not sure if you all recognized it or not, as you were sharing and talking about your identities, there was language of Black and African, or like Black, and then so there. Can you all speak to, like, is there a reason why you may be using those separately or interchangeably, or can you speak to that?
I can speak to that. So in one of my pieces, you see what you're talking about, like I, said it, Black and African. And I believe that Pan-African solidarity is critical and important. But then I also believe at the same time, right, that there is a unique, distinct, like linguistic and ethnic richness there that that needs to be made visible still, right, and needs to be not reduced. And so in one of my pieces, the audience was more it was more maybe West Africans or my family even, or that was the audience. I think of aunties and uncles that have raised me and loved on me that are Nigerian. And so that piece was talking to was that distinction of African was, unfortunately, because to some extent I have seen that distinction made as a child in conversations with Nigerians. Like, I'm not talking because I was a kid, right? So kids were seen and not heard in my family, but I've been there and I heard the distinction, right? And then as I grew up, it became problematic because sometimes the distinction was being made as an us versus them, or whatever. And so then so that's kind of what I was seeing from some of some of my elders in that regard. So they were making a distinction that wasn't necessarily to emphasize the richness of ethnicities and language, but more some of them as a distinction of us versus them, the kind of distinction rooted in white supremacy and division and colonial thinking and things like that. So I used that language to speak to that and to speak to that. And then at the same time, there's another piece where I didn't do that. But I think sometimes, I didn't think sometimes it's done for different purposes, but it can be done. I've seen it done in conversation to be divisive and there's a lot of words I can think of, but they're icky words. But then at the same time, there's conversations where you do that, especially speaking to like the countries, the African countries specifically, and saying someone's Ugandan or this or that, for the ethnic richness to not be lost and to be so. But that's why I did it deliberately, because I felt I needed to for certain audiences.
I don't think that the collective had a collective decision on a distinction. I think our narratives guided those distinctions, or they did not, depending on how you identify. But for me, Blackness has been a universe. It's a culture that transcends what land you are part of. And when I identify African heritage, it's me honoring the land and the ethnicity I come from. And you'll see that in my work that differentiation. And I often do that to dispel, just to speak to some of the stuff that Bibi was talking about in terms of some of the othering and the us and them tensions and atmospheric just disconnection that can happen in within the spectrum of Blackness. I usually articulate that stance for myself to feel grounded and not moved by those distinctions when I feel like they're harming me. So.
Thank you all for answering that question. Bibi, you had a question before we turn to our
my question kind of goes with what was said earlier, I think by Terry, and we may have already answered it, but I'm just looking like it was just the, I think it was what next? And I'm not sure, Terry, how you were referring to, how you were framing the question.
I'm just so excited about your project. I can see our young ladies coming behind you. I'm just trying to see, I would just like to it's just limitless as to what this can go. And so I'm just kind of wondering where you feel it's going to go, because many of you are mothers and you have daughters and things of that nature. And so I wonder if you're going to pass on that passion and that tradition to your daughters, to, Aya Collective Part 2, or the next generation or whatever. So that's really where I was coming with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to center Terry's question. I thought it was a really good question and a exciting question for us to be posed with as writers. Is just what's next. And for me, what's next has already been happening and continues to happen. Ebony reminded me of this recently, and I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I was, as many of us were, I was going through over the last 4 years. and so I had 2 children when we first got together in 2018 to write. And then I now have 3 children. And so my daughter that was born April 21st, 2019, she's 3 now. Her name, the Lord had me, our divine Lord had me name her Ominira Olua, which means liberated by God. And when I say by God, I'm not talking about the God that I was taught in my Catholic school. I'm talking about Black Jesus. I'm talking about the divine. I'm talking about, God of the universe. However we wanted to call her or frame her, that's what I'm talking about. And so Ominira means liberation, and not freedom, like I've always had freedom, but like liberation, like to like violently demand liberation. And so her name and her existence came from the divine, but was happening, like just watching how she is such a, it's like this freedom that she has that I didn't have, and I long to kind of move in. And so my what's next, Terry, is my children, right? And like I'm putting that to them. And then I also work with teachers right now as an educator. And so trying to do that work and to bring those conflicting, dehumanizing, traumatic, painful things that we as a society and structure put on children. I am trying to put it before those who want to be teachers, in hopes that my experience will be to them as knowledge and will make a difference and will be valid enough for them to take seriously, because they have access to so many children and will in the course of their careers.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's take some time to honor our presenters, Sister Ebony, Sister Bibi, Sister Amanda, Claudette, and as well as Effie. So you can unmute yourselves, or you can do the reaction figure, on the, the emoji, whatever you see, you see it. So thank you very much for sharing your work with us, and also the process to even get to this point. We're not done yet. We still have time to talk. I know you all have a lot to say. And so we will have another small group. And in this small group, there are 2 questions that we are posing within that small group. And I put, well, it's multiple questions within those 2 questions, but they are in the chat. The first one is what stood out to you? What resonated? What gives you pause? And then how does the Aise of Black women echo a way of knowing pertinent to Black people as a whole? So if you want to grab those questions out of the chat and take with you to the small groups, feel free to do that. And we will be in our small groups for about, let's say 5 to 8 minutes, and then we'll come back together and share out and then start to wrap up.
Okay.
So Brother Brian, can you put us in the breakouts?